Hi, and welcome to Conversations with Liv. If you are returning, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you're new, again, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode as well. Today, we are talking about narcissism. So, I'm planning to do a few more episodes on narcissism, how it pertains to relationships, your upbringing, things like that. So today I'm just going to talk about narcissism versus narcissistic personality disorder because there are a difference between the two. Right, let's get into it. So the definition of narcissistic is someone who is excessively fixated on their own needs while simultaneously obsessed with gaining approval from others. Their relationship with others are usually superficial, designed as a source of admiration rather than a channel for mutual intimacy. They may engage in narcissistic abuse, either using someone as a tool to feed their ego or neglecting the needs of someone who depends on them. So if someone has narcissistic traits, which all of us do, like on a spectrum of like someone that has narcissistic traits or from narcissistic traits to someone with NPD, essentially doesn't mean that they have a narcissistic personality disorder. They will just be described as someone who is narcissistic. So that's just the general definition. It's not like, okay, this person has been clinically diagnosed or this person has an actual mental health condition. No, they're just someone with narcissistic traits. So examples of these traits are entitlement, attention seeking, self-involvement, and approval seeking. I don't know if you can identify these traits in yourself. Doesn't mean you're like a bad person, you just have some narcissistic traits, which again is normal. So I'm going to now read out the definition of the narcissistic personality disorder. I'm going to probably shorten it to NPD whenever I'm referring to it in this episode. So if you hear me say NPD, I mean narcissistic personality disorder in comparison to narcissistic or narcissism, if that makes sense. That word is going to be difficult to keep saying every few minutes, but I'll try my hardest. So narcissistic personality disorder is a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, and a lack of empathy for others. So when it comes to mental health and mental disorders in general, there is two books. So there's the DSM, so that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And there is the ICD. Now, ICD stands for, I should have put that before I started speaking. 1 second. So the ICD stands for the International Classification of Diseases. Now, when it comes to diagnosing mental disorders, I was kind of taught to, I feel like one country uses one and another, like Americans use one. I believe Americans use the ICD, and like generally around the world, and like Europe uses the DSM. So the DSM has 9 criteria that somebody that has narcissistic personality disorder can have. If you have 5 of these 9, you clinically can qualify to be diagnosed as someone with narcissistic personality disorder. So the 9 criteria is grandiose sense of self-importance, preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, belief that you're special and unique and can only be understood or should associate with other special or high status people, need for excessive admiration, sense of entitlement, interpersonally exploited behavior, lack of empathy, envy of others, or a belief that others are envious of yourself, and demonstration of arrogant and haughty behaviors or attitudes. Now, I'm reading this and I'm like, I know quite a few people with these characteristics, and before reading this, I don't thought they're narcissistic. I just thought they're just, that's just how they are. Interesting. However, the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder can only be made by a qualified mental health professional, which I am not yet, so I'll leave the qualification to them. Now, some researchers have tried to identify the causes of NPD, and they've kind of attributed it to early life experiences such as abuse, excessive praise, lack of a lack of an authentically validating environment, parental overindulgence, and unreliable parenting. Now, I will say I've never been a big fan of parents overindulging their kids, just because I just feel like you raise kids that don't really have the like a value for things. But who am I to say that? I don't have a child, so who knows? I might have children and then start overindulging them myself. Genes and biology are also thought to play a role. However, like the research on that is not concrete. Like similar to other mental disorders, like autism and things like that. Well, that's not mental, so that's something. Anyway, they believe genes can play a part, but there isn't concrete evidence for that. Now, the thing is with narcissism and NPD, because people don't tend to go and be like, oh hey, I need help, there isn't accurate numbers as to how many people actually suffer from it. So the same way I feel like I know people that have these traits, there are probably a lot of people out there that know somebody that have these traits or is suffering from NPD, but because they'll never go and get help, we don't really know the numbers exactly. So it's not something that's been studied like really well. I'd say something like depression and anxiety, even though there is a lot of more research to be done, and there is like a comorbidity in terms of it can be a multitude of things that can create depression and anxiety, there is more research on it in comparison to NPD. But one thing they did find is that it is more common in men than women. Why? I don't know. It might be due to the roles that men play in terms of having to be like in more senior roles, more competitive environments, traditionally anyway. Not to say that women are not in those environments now, but traditionally men were in those environments where you had to kind of play the part of somebody that knew what they were doing, knew what they were talking about, in turn maybe creating a persona of someone that may have narcissistic characteristics. That persona can then link into your actual self, and you might start seeing yourself in a different way, or a spade, and you might just be narcissistic. Anyway, when you're thinking about this, you're probably wondering, okay, can somebody with NPD or someone that's a narcissist, can they change? Yes, but again, with someone that has NPD, they might struggle to see the issue with the characteristics and traits that they have, so they might not see the need for treatment. They also might use therapy in a way for them to get even more validation and admiration from others, and they might just blame their behavior again on other people, like their parents or someone that broke their heart, or whatever the case may be. There has been instances where people with NPD have manipulated and charmed their therapist, so it's best if someone with NPD or a narcissist is going to go for therapy, to go for somebody that is specialized in treating people with narcissistic personality disorder. So it also has to be of the will of the person. If you know somebody with NPD and you kind of force them to go, the treatment won't be as successful as opposed to if they decide to go themselves. Also with that as well, someone with NPD needs to see that them going to therapy is something that will be beneficial for their lives and not just a waste of time. So if they can be shown that it's going to improve their quality of life like tenfold, then that will motivate them to keep going for the therapy and keep trying to change. Now, because I said it's under researched, there isn't like a one size fits all in terms of this treatment is best for NPD. No, it's kind of like a case basis, and whatever that person is suffering from, what criteria they have, will then determine what treatment is going to be used. So I've been mentioning therapy a lot in terms of the treatment, but some people also take medication, so it's not like it won't really affect them as well in terms of the long term, like trying to change their thought processes might change their characteristics. That's best for therapy. But because it's like another thing that might have things like depression, anxiety, taking the medication will help will help deal with the feelings of depression, anxiety in comparison to the NPD itself. But if they're feeling less depressed and anxious, that might also just improve their quality of life as well. Alright, so finally, if you know someone that has NPD, you need to first research it more and recognize what narcissistic behaviors actually look like. So they might do things like gaslighting you. So they might do things like gaslighting, manipulate your feelings, manipulate your actions, always seek your attention, seek your approval, things like that. So once you know what to look for, then you know the best steps forward. If you then, decide I don't want to really engage with that person anymore, then set clear boundaries, which isn't always easy but will help you in the long run. And find someone to talk to about it. So if maybe you want to seek help with this person, or you want them to seek help, talk to a therapist and see how they can probably approach them, or maybe find a way to, I don't know, it's really hard to be like, I'm going to get someone to go see a therapist. But if you want them to change, and maybe you spoke to them and they want to change, that's the best thing that you can do, really. Now, that is it. I just wanted to talk briefly about what narcissism and NPD is before I go into things like narcissistic parents and narcissistic relationships. I hope you enjoyed the episode. It wasn't too long, it was quite brief, surprisingly. If you've enjoyed it, like it, share it. If you like, follow, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you guys next week. Bye.